tiny URL. And for those online, the link is dropped in chat. Okay. All righty. So here is our fall November calendar. So we have all these lovely events. It's until week 10. You can take a picture of it. Don't forget that these also will be shared with you. These slides will be shared with you at the end in the meeting recap email, as well as this is in our previous weekly email that was sent out this past Monday. But without further ado, activity points after the in-person screen comes in. Okay, so fall raffle. We do have a raffle this fall. It is open to all prospective and official. In order to get one raffle entry, you do have to be silver standing, which is just 10 activity points. And then for gold, you get 2 raffle entries. And actually for gold, after the 15 points, for example, if you have like 17 points or like 19 points, you do get more raffle entries. And so the winners will be announced during a virtual live stream, probably most likely through Instagram, and the dates and time will be later announced. But again, you do want your activity points, so such as attending our general meeting, our fundraiser that's actually happened later today, you want these activity points. And as well as our special social, this is only for our gold members, which is 15 points, and it will be bowling. And there's a great deal where you get rides to the event, and also you get $10 off per person. And with gas prices now, you want this deal. So remember, 15 activity points. Okay, here are our upcoming events for week 6 and 7. Everything is in Pacific time. And as you can see, there is our Krispy Kreme fundraiser, which we'll talk a little bit more, but also don't forget to join us for our next journal meeting and social. That is from 2 weeks from now. Okay.
So our Krispy Kreme fundraiser is officially ending tonight at 11:59 p.m. So if you're on the lookout for more activity points, this is a great way for you to earn 2 additional activity points. These Krispy Kreme gift cards don't expire and they're really easy to redeem. So yeah, in order to purchase, you just need to Venmo $12 to that Venmo account or Zelle at the number seen. And make sure to include your full name, RMail, and Saikai fundraiser. And it doesn't even have to be you who purchases it. You can share this with some other people and they can buy it on your behalf and you will get the activity points as well. I already sent out the gift cards for anyone who's already like bought it, but yeah, if you send it out, if you buy it before the end of tonight at 11:59, your gift cards will be sent to you by Friday. Cards will be emailed to you from the UCR Saikai email. Thank you. And here's just like an image of how you're able to redeem. So the link that will be sent in the email looks something like this. And all you have to do is like open it and it will show this. And you just need to show that to the register at any Krispy Kreme location that's not in Puerto Rico or Connecticut. And they scan it and they will give you your dozen. Also, does anyone happen to know how much a dozen of glazed donuts cost, like regular price? Yes, what's your guess, Ulysses?
Let's see, $20?
$20. Edwin, yes.
I think those 52 cents. That would never happen. I'm going with $15.99.
$15.99. Yes. $14.99. Any other guesses? Okay, so right now a dozen of glazed donuts is going for $15.50. So you're actually saving money by like buying these digital dozens because it's only $12, 12 for 12. So yeah, it's a great way to support Saikai as well as, you know, get donuts for yourself or gift them to someone else.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm going to talk to you about a charity event that's coming up this Friday. So basically, it's our Cards for Seniors event, which is we're going to be making handmade cards that we're going to give out to isolated seniors just to make their day a little better. And then materials will be provided for those that go in person, and the in-person time is at 5 p.m. But this event would go on until November 11th, so you can give cards. And then if you do sign up, an email will be sent out tomorrow
And anyone that signs up after tomorrow, don't worry, I'll still be sending out those emails with all the info. And then if you have any more, you can always DM me or email us. Okay, this is also me. So I just want to say, so our charity miles, thank you everyone so far for participating. Our goal originally was 800 miles, which 800 miles is a lot of miles. And we are already at that. We are at 790 miles last time I checked. So good job, everyone. Thank you all for participating. 16 hours is the max of volunteer service you can get. So if you would still like to participate, you still have a week. And every 2 miles you get is 1 hour of volunteer work. Once again, if you do have questions, you can always reach out to me.
Awesome, thank you. So we also have our next workshop for fall. It's with COPE scholars. And so with this workshop, you can learn about their program and how to be involved in a variety of different settings of like healthcare. It will be virtual, so you can join via the Zoom link here. And it will be November 7th, Monday, which is next week from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m.
I think someone in Zoom is unmuted. Sounds good. Hi everyone. We'll be having our fall induction ceremony next Tuesday, November 8th from 6 to 8 p.m. Although the RSVP form is closed, you can still join us and celebrate our new official members and graduating members.
Awesome, thank you. So again, like you do not have to RSVP. If you could just please just show up and celebrate our members with us. Okay, and if I can now have our PWC Camp director come up and speak.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Gerardo Michel, and I am the PWC Camp Director for 2023. So PWC is an annual event held by UCR Psychi. Its purpose is to encourage high school students to pursue higher education and to inspire them to succeed as psychology majors. So I am going to need a team to pull this event off. So I'm going to need 4 different coordinators who can help make this event the best that it can be. For accessing the application, you can go ahead and just go onto the slides and click on the link. The deadline is Wednesday, November 16th, which is actually coming up a bit fast. So, but I definitely look forward to seeing much of you.
And we also have more application and opportunities. So this is for our site 2023. This is our largest event held by Psychi. It's every spring, and it is our undergraduate psychology research conference. This provides the opportunity for UCR undergraduate students like yourself to present your research. And there are also different like panels and speakers to discuss various topics in psychology. So if you are interested in applying, please do see the guidelines and apply here. This does close Wednesday, November 16th, the same time as the PWC Camp coordinator application. Okay. So if I can now have Cameron speak on this.
Hello, everyone. So we have our 4th annual Fall Lab Fair coming up in 2 weeks. Actually, it's going to be on Thursday, November 17th from 5 to 7 p.m. at the hub. So if you scan the QR code on the slide, then if you could RSVP for us so that we know, get a little head count on who's coming. And yeah, it'll be a chance for you to just interact with any like psychology or psychology related lab, apply to become like a research assistant, or just to learn how to get involved in research.
Thank you. And again, like you will receive these slides in an email. So you can obviously click on all the links that we provide on the slideshow. Okay, and now I'm gonna give my VP to talk.
Hello, my name is Paris. I'm the VP. So we're going to go ahead and transition into the main portion of our meeting, which is how to network. And we have a super awesome presenter here for everyone. Oh, we're moving. Sorry. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to our speaker, Jackson.
Awesome. Thanks, Tiffany, and thanks for having me all. My name is Jackson, and I was a part of the class of 2019 and was part of the Ad Lab and the Pale Lab. And currently I'm a recruiter at Google. I primarily work on technical program management roles as well as like project management roles within Google Cloud. And most of the positions I'm working on, it's pretty interesting. They work on like pretty much interconnecting the world to our products and services. So like the ability to kind of use like Google Docs and Google Sheets and slides in a collaborative function. Some of the teams that I work on pretty much interconnect the world to those services. But today I'll be speaking with you all about networking best practices and really how to put your best foot forward in interviews with conversations with prospective employers or folks that you're simply just networking with. And also too, I'm actually a huge Disney fan, so I don't know why I was like, yeah, let's just throw in a quick fun fact in there too. But we can jump on over to the next slide. Awesome. Well, you might be wondering, like, why does networking matter? And why do people in the industry like network? Like, what does this mean? But I think it's like probably the most like important tool in your professional arsenal. For one, it's actually the #1 method of landing your dream role and building an incredible career. In fact, 80% of jobs that are landed in general and across all different industries all over the world are actually landed through networking. In terms of my personal career, it's pretty much been through networking that I've been able to get pretty much any opportunity that I've been a part of. And then beyond that, it's about learning about a new role too, learning about a role or an area that you've always been curious about, but didn't know where to start. And I think it's a really important place to be in, just because let's say, you know, if you're in school and you're not entirely sure of what you want to pursue, like let's say let's say you've never been like a nurse or something. What would be the best person to kind of learn about what nursing's like, than a nurse? So one of the things you can do is kind of reaching out to someone that's in the industry that you're interested in, poke their brain, really get a good understanding, and really just to understand if it's a place that you really want to be in general. So those are some of the most important points, I'd say. And then jumping right on to the next slide. Awesome. Well, this slide pretty much talking about like, why do I even network, or where do I even network? You might be wondering, like, where do I start? You know, what kind of platforms can I network on? But there are actually quite a bit. So these are kind of some of the platforms, certainly not an like exhaustive list of where you can start. But to start off with the first one there, your circle around you. Really important to really interact with the people around you and the people that you know and the people that they know. If you think about like the 6 degrees of separation, you're really connected to anyone in the world. So really hone in on that. If you know of anyone in your network or someone that might be connected to someone in your network that you're really interested in connecting with because they're doing a job that you're really interested in, or they're pretty much, you know, someone that you want to really get connected with to be able to get into that next role. That's a really great place to start. Or just connecting with your peers around you. This is a great place to start. I mean, within Saikai, and I'm sure that you guys are already doing that too. So definitely focus on that for sure. The next piece, LinkedIn, probably the most powerful tool in like networking and job searching in general. I can't really say enough for how powerful LinkedIn is. I think most folks find their jobs within LinkedIn. And it's also how companies will usually find people in general. And it's really like if you don't exist on LinkedIn, it's hard for companies to be able to have that visibility to you as a professional, or at least a growing professional. If they haven't received any kind of application or resume. And honestly too, even if any kind of company has a resume, sometimes, let's say later on down the road, you gather more experience, that is not a kind of active document that's really living and breathing. So they won't be able to have your most up-to-date background. So making sure that's like as up-to-date as possible is so important. And it's also a place where you can find a lot of those professionals and folks that are really on that platform to be able to share knowledge and where you can learn where you can gain knowledge as well. And then the third piece there, really events, networking, job fairs, all those kinds of events that you can find at UCR. But also even beyond UCR as well. I have to say, the Career Center has been incredible in my time at UCR with all the cool networking events, cool opportunity to just walk up to different companies that you might be interested in, or maybe even like companies that you're fascinated in learning more about. I'd say networking can really benefit you in all kind of avenues, not only by finding your next role, It can really get your name out there and really build your solid network so that when the time comes, and you might not be looking for a role, but maybe later on when that time comes, you'll be able to know exactly who to go to. And maybe you remember like, oh, I spoke with John from CVS Pharmacy, or I spoke with Kevin from Target. You know to reach back out to those folks just because they were kind of that source of knowledge when you were starting out. And then social media networking can be found on really any kind of platform, not only on these professional ones, but in fact, one specific job page that I actually recommend is on Albert's List. It's a Facebook page that has a group of bunch of professionals just really sharing their wealth of knowledge, but also helping to uplift others in the professional industry or help folks find new roles. So that's kind of where you can start networking. And then if we can jump on over to the next slide. Awesome. All right, perfect. So you might wonder, what are some like networking best practices? And there are definitely a couple here. These are pretty much 3 that I found to be probably the most important. For one, we'll start off with don't be afraid. Most people don't succeed at networking because they're either too shy or intimidated to even approach someone influential or something, or someone that you're interested in learning more about. Most people love talking about themselves and are likely to help folks who really need it. And worst case scenario, they just say no. And then you can jump on to the next person who will say yes. And then the next piece there, really take every single conversation that you go into with networking as really working to build kind of a relationship. So relationship first. Don't jump into every conversation as if it's a job interview. Really focus on building that connection to get to know the other person. Ask what they're excited about for the weekend, or maybe what their favorite like Starbucks drink is, like if they like pumpkin spice and whatnot. So just really kind of focus on building that relationship rather than sounding like a canned robot that's like spewing out words. And then finally, the third piece, study your story. This is probably the most important like piece of advice that I can give to anyone wanting to build on any kind of networking skill. Really truly spend the time to understand yourself and your experience. You know, you might think, oh, well, you know, I'm probably the best person to understand, you know, my experience because I have lived my experience. But sometimes it's really hard to articulate your own experience if you haven't spent the time to sit down with your thoughts, sit down with your experience, and, you know, vocalize it to the people around you. So really spending that time to understand your abilities overall, so that, you know, you'll be able to find more success in interviews and conversations when interviewers are chatting with you, or someone influential or someone that you find influential is who you're chatting with. This is really helpful, especially if you feel like you might get a little bit nervous. It helps to break down the nerves, because when you approach those conversations without like having to memorize like a canned script, like if they ask you a question or you want to tell them something, you're able to have a more organic conversation where you're genuinely talking about yourself and your experience that you're really passionate about, rather than just like spewing out like nervous words. So making sure that's like the most important piece is probably like my best like networking advice, interviewing advice in general, but really conversations overall. So really spend that time to understand yourself. I couldn't focus on that anymore. But yeah, if we can jump on over to the next slide. Awesome. All right. Well, jumping right into creating that great elevator pitch. So now, before we get started, I do want us to keep in mind that this pitch, you know, we do want this pitch to be a very concise, review of your background, and clear to the point. And also, as we talked about earlier, we don't want to sound like this is a canned pitch. In this slide, we'll be talking about some important pieces to an elevator pitch, but really focus on the content of, you know, each and every aspect in this elevator pitch rather than the structure, and really keep it natural. So we'll start off by, you know, right at the top of an elevator pitch, you know, an introduction. So of course, state your name, maybe even throwing in a quick fun fact just to kind of reel them in, you know, just be like, hey, you know, my name is this so-and-so, really love, you know, peaches and I love pinto beans, like just maybe something random to grab their attention. And then the next piece is there, you know, summarize what you do. This is where you want to provide a brief summary of the most relevant aspects of your background within the conversation. If you aren't sure of where to start with this section specifically, try writing down, all of your, bullet points of your backgrounds, maybe spending that time going through your resume to kind of understand what you've done in general. I know in the last slide, we talked about, truly understanding your experience. This is where you want to summarize that so that when you're talking to someone specific, like let's say you're going into a job fair and you want to talk about your background and experience. Let's say you're really interested in like finance roles. Really understand your background related to finance. That's where you want to like summarize what you do, but most relevantly what you do. And then the next piece is, what do you want? This is a really important section. Be sure to adjust this, to the type of conversation that you're having. So whether it be an interview, job fair, meeting, etc., like you're meeting someone new, this is a really great opportunity to explain the value that you want to bring to this conversation. So like, for example, let's say you're in an interview and the interviewer asks you, hey, tell me about yourself. You'll of course start off with your introduction, tell them about what you do. And then this part is probably the most important. You can talk about what you want to do for this company and what kind of impacts you want to bring. Like, for example, let's say you have a finance background. I don't know why I'm using this example, but let's say you have that finance example where you've worked on so many different projects that, that have brought so much value to, maybe finance reports. And this is the value that you want to bring to this company because you want to streamline finance reports for this accounting department. So stating what you want is probably the most important, piece of your elevator pitch, but making it as concise as possible so that they can really understand the true value that you're bringing to this conversation. And then finally, a call to action. You want to finish this off with some sort of ask. You can ask for a meeting, express interest in the role, or what you're looking to do to kind of bring into this future role. So this is a pretty important section. I think this can be quite fungible with like, job interviews, but also like networking events. But this is definitely a pretty important one, really talking about why you're even having this conversation in the first place. So these are, a couple of different pieces that kind of create an elevator pitch. Certainly not, the complete, not the structure that, not always the structure that you want to, employ when you're going into a job interview or any kind of networking conversation. Sure, it might be a good idea to kind of create this kind of structure. Start with the first piece, second piece, third piece, and the fourth piece, but really spend that time to truly understand it so that you can play around with talking about your experience in these different aspects. So yeah, that's pretty much kind of how to create that elevator pitch. And really jumping into the next slide, we're going to go ahead and jump into some breakout rooms so that we can practice walking through and talking about our experience. I think this is probably the most important thing that you can possibly do in really your professional work. I think at the end of the day, when you're going into job interviews, networking, it's really about how you market yourself. So really spend that time to get comfortable with talking about yourself to random people and strangers. Sometimes I remember when I was like interviewing at any, some of the different interviews that I've gone through, I just talk to the wall and I'm like, hey wall, like, my name is Jackson. I don't know if you knew me, but this is the kind of experience that I've got. This is the kind of value I want to bring. And I really want this role because, this is what I can do for the company. And just kind of walking through that. So we're going to go ahead and jump into some breakout rooms. I don't know that we have right now. I think one of the things that I think that was really important was kind of demystifying. A thing that I find is that, like, as college students, if you haven't had the chance to work, the kind of limited experience that you feel like you might have. But I think one thing that I was chatting with Matthew about and a couple others is that, you bring a very important perspective, which is kind of that theoretical perspective. And you're pretty much involved in classes being taught by instructors who are furthering the field of psychology. So that's certainly a huge selling point that you can really bring into, your elevator pitch in general. But just wanted to shout that out as it's really important in like the conversations. And I think the next piece is like going into like any questions that anyone might have. I know that we just finished up kind of working through it. So I think it's the next slide after the current one. I can also share my screen too.
Sorry, Jackson, I'm muting right now.
Oh, sorry, no problem.
I had to share my screen. And then if anyone has any questions, go ahead and, raise your hand, drop it in the chat, or anyone in person, you can also raise your hand. I can see all of you. Here is that resource that you were talking about, Jackson.
The resource. What was that specific? What was that? Sorry.
Sorry about that. Thank you for sharing these resources, Jackson. And this
Oh,
is
yeah.
the slide you were talking about, right?
Oh, yes, sorry, exactly this one, yeah. So yeah, if you guys want to get connected, there's my LinkedIn. There are some resources down there. So I actually worked on a LinkedIn profile and resume presentation in a previous SciPi meeting. So feel free to click on that link once you guys get that slide deck. It'll have a good run through of how to like create that LinkedIn profile, create that resume. It's also got some really great like templates on how to like really great resume templates as well. There's also a nice elevator pitch guide as well, and another elevator pitch guide by Indeed. So definitely some solid resources there. But yeah, wanted to open the floor if you guys had any questions. Feel free to raise your hand or speak up and hop up out of mute. I promise I don't bite.
I actually have a question for you, Jackson.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
was asked by someone before this meeting who wasn't able to make it. But they wanted to ask you, do you think that elevator pitches really work if you give it to someone in an elevator?
That's a really good question. And I think Matthew was wondering like why is it called an elevator pitch? I'll kind of give that context as well. So like an elevator pitch is basically like, let's say you're in an elevator with someone important and you want to really in short give them a full understanding of like your background and what you can bring and what you can offer. And it's pretty much just a speech quick enough to say in an elevator, you can get that message across. But it actually works. I was actually in an elevator and I got to meet what was it? One of like my manager's manager. And it wasn't like to get a job already in the job that I'm in, but it's more so to like get my name across, talk about what I'm working on and what I want to work on in this role. So it does work. It certainly works in an elevator. And yeah, I'd be curious to see if there's I mean, I know that within a lot of movies, you've kind of seen that as well, with like sales pitches too. So this is not only used in like networking, but also in a lot in sales. Because let's say like you get a call from like a salesperson and they're like, hey, I'm calling from this company and I want to sell you on something. You got to be quick or else like they're gonna hang up. So it does work for sure in an elevator. A very funny question. I like that's hilarious.
I have another question from the chat.
Yeah.
How do you balance professionalism while also like maintaining like a unique sense of personality and character when you're
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm like a really goofy person to begin with. So I have I'm like probably the worst person to ask for that. Because I'm just like kind of silly regardless. But I think, I think it's important to, still be really kind of, open with your own personality, regardless of any kind of conversation that you're going through. I mean, granted, like if you're going into an interview and they ask you a question, you want to make sure that you answer the question, not like joke around with like, oh, make like a yo mama's joke or something, or like, I don't know, crack a joke at like a random thing. So, I think when you go through enough interviews and and enough conversations, you kind of find your flow and kind of find your creative way of expressing yourself. I've only been able to find that after going through many different conversations. Like, let's say you're kind of looking for, like, for example, if you guys are like looking for any kind of internships for the summer, make sure you kind of hop on conversations and interviews with companies that you might even not be interested in. Like you find a job, you're like, go ahead and hit apply. Maybe you get a phone call from the company. Still hop on that phone call so you can kind of get that experience with talking to someone and relaying your pitch. But still practice that. So I think that's probably the most important thing. And that's the best way to be able to find that find your personal way of expressing yourself and talking about yourself.
Awesome. This is actually my question for you, Jackson.
Yeah, sure.
So I know that a lot of people can feel really shy about jumping into these interview contexts, or even like at job fairs, you kind of see like a cluster of people around that table you really want to go to.
For sure.
What's the best way for someone who might not be as assertive to really get themselves in there and not only make themselves stand out, but just engage?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I think there's a couple things you can do. I think one of the things that helps me is, for one, having a structure to kind of rely on. Maybe whether that structure be the kind of questions that you can prepare going into the job fair, Maybe it's the different questions or aspects that you want to learn more about a company. Another piece to that as well is doing some research before going into the job fair. Some of the things I personally did whenever I went into the job fairs at UCR was going through the list of companies that came by and kind of do some research, poke around a little bit throughout these companies, and create some questions that you can have in your arsenal so that when you walk up to these booths, you're already a leg up into the conversation, and they already know that, hey, this person's already done the research and is pretty interested in what we're doing here. And then I think another piece to that too, I've been at a couple of job fairs and like they're itching to talk to people. So just know that like, they're not as intimidating as they seem, but rather just dreading to talk to people in general. But be natural. I think one of the like the best things overall is that like at the end of the day, like no matter how intimidating it is and how scary it may feel, they're just people. So it's like talking to another person. Just imagine sometimes what I do is like if I'm scared to talk to someone, I'll walk up to someone like intimidating, but then I'll like imagine that it's like my friend. I'm just like, hey, what's up, Kevin? Like, what's going on? But of course, it's not Kevin. But that's kind of a couple of tricks that I'll do. But starting with like a framework, doing a bit of research, and then really calming down, taking that extra breath, and then reminding yourself that they're only people.
You mentioned having questions prepared, which I think is
Yeah.
like a big idea. Is there anything else, like maybe more physical, that people should have prepared when they're going to like, interviews, lab fairs,
Yeah.
sorry, not lab fair, job fairs, and
Mhm.
like other contexts, like maybe a resume or a CV or something like that?
Good question. Good question. So the kind of landscape of this world has been very much changed as far as the pandemic goes. Like a lot of job fairs have also become virtual. But I think as far as like in-person job fairs, I honestly recommend, showing up in obviously like, some professional clothing. That's really important. When you're going to these job fairs, I don't think that it's important to have like, there's a certain like thickness of paper that typical resumes are supposed to be in. Maybe print out like 5 to 10 copies of your resume and maybe have a little like binder ready or folder ready so that you can, hand out your resume, but also kind of jot down some notes of companies that you're really interested in talking to. Those are some of the most important things that I personally have done that have been really helpful. But I think from an employer side, gives us an insight that this other person really cares about kind of what we might be talking about and what we might have to bring. So yeah, I think those are some of the main things. But a lot of job fairs have gone like virtual. So when you go into these job fairs, make sure you have like ample lighting when you're going into your Zoom conversations and maybe video conversations. Professional clothing, you can do like professional top and then like your, I don't know, boxers or something, but you can just do pretty much any kind of dress wear there. But yeah, I think those are kind of the main things you want to have ready. But I think at the end of the day, like really knowing yourself and knowing yourself and truly understanding your experience to be able to articulate that, that's probably the most important thing overall. And then I think there's also a question from Jenna. Do you have to dress professional at interviews, job fairs, or business casual? All right. Yeah, and it's that last piece. So it really does depend on the company. Like here at Google, like my interviewer for like I think my last and final interviewer, and they were like a pretty intimidating person because they were like, and a manager's manager wore a tank top. And it was this dude that was just like, it looked like he just woke up. So I don't think it's like, I mean, you don't really have to be business casual by any means. Like you can just be casual going into the conversation. But then also too, like other companies are probably a bit more formal as well. So I think a good rule of thumb is checking out the company's Glassdoor and maybe even kind of really perusing through that to understand the culture of the company. Because if it is a more businessier kind of structured type company, that's where you want to be a bit more professional. And I think another good rule of thumb is once you can, maybe if you find photos of, or kind of maybe some like, once you get a good understanding of like the professional dress wear of a certain company, try to go a level above it. It doesn't hurt to be, more dressed than you need to be in an interview rather than underdressed. So there's a couple different pointers that you can kind of keep in mind. But at the end of the day, I think the most important thing to keep in mind is really make sure that you're doing that research on Glassdoor or any other means to kind of understand the company's dress dress culture and attire, and then go accordingly from that.
Really quick, I just want to remind all of our UCR students that we do, like, the Career Center has like a, I think it's called the Career Closet, or like our closet or something, our closet, where you can go and get professional attire for free from them. So like, if you're like, I don't have those professional clothes, you know, you can go there. They're a free resource for you guys. Oh yeah, you can do it once every quarter. Is that correct? 3 items per quarter. Thank you. For free. So definitely utilize that resource. And I have, we're getting a little low on time, but I have, I think, a really important question for you, Jackson.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a lot of our people here are really interested in research. How generalizable are the tips you gave us to applying to research labs? And do you have any
Great
additional
question.
information or tips that you'd like to give us, like in the context of applying for labs?
Yeah, of course. No, 100%. And I think that these, these tips and, these tips on kind of networking very much apply to research labs. In fact, I think a lot of the information that I have in here was inspired by like my interviews in the research labs at UCR. It's very relevant. I think just to kind of go back to a couple of the slides here, when you're working on creating your elevator pitch, I think the foundation of what I was trying to get across is understanding, what you do, right? But then kind of understanding yourself, like really understanding what you really want out of the conversation, but also getting across what you really want to be able to do for whatever kind of place. So for example, if you're hopping into a research lab, if you're going into maybe those conversations and maybe even an email, you'll start off by introducing yourself like, hey, I'm Kevin and I'm a second year psych student. And right now I'm studying psychology, but I'm really fascinated in, I came really fascinated in, this aspect of psychology from this class. I noticed that this is a lab here at UCR that, focuses on this and works on this. And I'd be really interested in seeing if I can help out in any capacity. I'd love to be a part of this. So that's kind of, some sort of elevator pitch. I know that I talked about earlier about, how, this is a good structure to kind of follow upon, but you can rearrange it to be able to work to, however, work for any kind of situation that you're in. But one thing that you can do for applying to research labs is when you go into those conversations, let them know a little bit about yourself, let them know what you're passionate about learning, and let them know that you're really open to helping out and really being a part of whatever that cause is. And I've been able to be a part of research labs just by doing that. Like, I think there was one lab that I wanted to study actually clinical psychology. That was when I went to UCR, that was what I really wanted to do. And so I didn't know where to start. I think I started off with reaching out to my, I think it was my Psych 1 teacher. I didn't really know where to start. Because I looked at the directory and I didn't notice that I noticed that there were not a lot of clinical psychology labs. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just email the professor. Maybe I'll email like a TA and say, hey, I'm really interested in learning this and I want to dive deeper in this. Are there any labs that work on this? And that kind of sent me right to the right professor and whatnot. But I think with all of the information that's here on creating that elevator pitch and selling and marketing yourself, it's also very important. This is certainly really important, of course, for like networking and job fairs and whatnot, and selling yourself in interviews, but also selling yourself as a contributor in a research lab as well too.
Fantastic. We have time for one more question. Does anyone have any final questions that they'd like to, share out loud, drop in the chat? Any burning questions for Jackson? Okay. In that case, I have one last burning question for you, Jackson.
Sure,
Can you
yeah.
tell us your most memorable story about going through an interview or like elevator pitch, whatever, networking
Yeah.
content you choose? And what was like the secret weapon that you pulled out to really make that interview happen or make that pitch happen?
Ooh, okay. That's a really good question. I'm gonna have to think back. Let's see. So maybe like an elevator pitch I've used to be able to land a really cool opportunity. I think thinking back to, let's see. That's a tough question. I would have to say I was like in terms of my work, like currently I'm here at Google. My last role was at a place called Maxim Healthcare. And it was pretty much like a recruitment agency, and you worked on a lot of recruitment work and staffing for many different types of roles, but wanted to make a change, wanted to dive into something more like what I'm doing right now. And so I had a lot of different friends in the industry and so many different spaces. And I actually had one friend in particular who was in a company that was really interested in. So I wasn't really too close to this person. In fact, I didn't know them at all. They were actually a coworker, but I didn't talk to them a single day, like a single time. But I think I found their phone number from someone random, and basically what was it? I just like texted them out of the blue, and I was like, "Hey, I got your phone number from Daniel. I noticed that you're at a company that I really want to be at. It's something that I'm really passionate about." And I was wondering if you had time to hop on a call to just maybe just poke your brain. Sometimes I go into these like networking situations by, going in with the intent to just learn and just absorb information and learn more about the other person and have them gush. And went through the conversation, and eventually they said, I knew that our team is hiring, and maybe it might be a good shot to be able to like send your resume over to one of our hiring managers and see if they might be interested in, or see if they might be interested. So I figured, okay, well, why not? I'll just go ahead and send my resume. Didn't think much of it. They were currently, I think they were at Facebook at the time, and then they moved on over to Google like the following week after. So they were fresh into the company. So they didn't really know the team all too much, but basically sent my resume in and everything, waited for like 2-3 weeks, and then I heard back from the team. And then eventually like that one thing led to another, and been able to land like my current role as of now. So it basically went from like reaching out to a complete stranger from an ex-coworker to being able to lead me to kind of where I'm at today. But I think beyond that, that's like the most interesting one beyond like anything else. A lot of it has just been like reaching out as well to like folks that are on LinkedIn, wanting to learn about kind of different experiences and learn about them overall. But yeah, I think that one's probably the most interesting one, and kind of one that I'm like really happy about for sure.
That was a really great story, Jackson. That was very inspiring. I hope you're all inspired to take that leap of faith. So with that, it is 7:30, so we will go ahead and wrap up here. Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you so much, Jackson, for presenting. You had so much valuable information. For those of you who are in person, we will be setting up rides to our Cha2O social/fundraiser in a few minutes. But yes, thank you for coming, and thank you, Jackson.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, all. And if you guys want any